Now, during Franklin's unrestrained display of playa-hating, behind his back, the surface of the pond was agitated. What started as some ripples quickly turned into some gurgles. Then one part of the little pond began to turn in circles. And then one part of this little pond that began to turn in circles. Sorry. And then this whirlpool, like when one unplugs the bathtub drain, began to swirl like 1/5,000,000th of a hurricane. Now that may not seem much of a concern to you, of course, but for a little froggy in a pond, that's tons of force. But Franklin didn't notice as he jeered derisively. No, Franklin didn't seem to even realize till he had sneeringly turned around and with a showing offish hop, plunged straight into the vortex with a rather softish plop. Well, the other froggies freaked out, and they creaked out in dismay. They positively panicked, and they streaked every which way, except for Flizabeth, who sat there staring at the mayhem, and Fergus, because that type of thing was bound to fascinate him. Transfixed, they watched the water churn. It made a whooshing sound, while Flizabeth's Frere Franklin kept on getting swooshed around. He quickly swooshed by one time, then a second, and then a 12th, and on the 23rd swoosh by, poor Franklin spluttered, "Help!" Then Flizzy also muttered, "Help," again due to her tic, and then audibly continued with, "Please help him, Fergus, quick." And Fergus looked at Flizabeth with pity and attraction, and gravely nodding once to her, he flittered into action. But first, he did some fancy figuring beside the pond edge, while Franklin floundered round a while in fateful frothy bondage. "By fortune fair," Ferg mused, "this tree has found a way to fall, so that its fulcrum rests upon the pond's retaining wall." Then, photometric fast, Fergus made a quick decision. He slid beneath the spike-like root and kicked it with precision, which made the so-called foliage dip down above the water, so basically the thing was like a giant teeter-totter. Then, with an impatience that was uncharacteristic, Fergus very firmly called, "Now grab a hold, you dipstick!" And without hesitation, Franklin heeded the command, and somehow, mid-gyration, Franklin caught it with a hand, and then Fergus didn't waste a single second to compute. He leapt into the air, and then he landed on the root, and Franklin at the further end was catapulted out, while all the other frogs looked on in helpless fear and doubt. Across the sky, cartwheeling with a squealing caterwaul, knowing full well what goes up has also got to fall, flipping, flapping, flailingly, Frank Frog was flung to freedom. If he'd been wearing underpants, he probably would have peed him. Well, Franklin Frog crash-landed in a thick and prickly rose, and as he re-emerged, he struck a carefully carefree pose. But everybody couldn't help but think he looked a fool, and all eyes turned to Fergus, squatted stoic by the pool. Then Fliz hopped up to Ferg and said, "Wow, you were very brave. Thanks for saving Franklin from an early watery grave." And Fergus, flabbergasted, said, "I think you're really neat," which Flizzy did foreseeably, though willingly, repeat. Then something shifted, interrupting Ferg's infatuation. The strange, four-sided foliage had flipped to fully face him. And Fergus fixed it with a steady, scrutinizing stare, for now he noticed funky symbols scribed across the square. But frogs are feeble-minded, even gifted ones like Ferg, and they unfortunately cannot read a single word, so Ferg could not decipher, despite all his first-class frogness, a simple phrase like, "Keep away while pond cleaning in progress." Regardless, Fergus raised his eyes to view the skies beyond, and then his gaze refocused from the sign back to the pond, and seeing how the water was officially all gone, Fergus said, "There's something sort of fishy going on." Then, even with phonetical ineptness to excuse him, Fergus drew the following not-so-far-off conclusion. You know, there may be more to this odd tree than we all think. Its advent here today is a pretty weird coinkydink. So I say, maybe it's a high-tech whirlpool warning system. Maybe brought by aliens. this morning and we missed him. Franklin blurted, frankly, this is all falsification. We're fed up with this fantasy and flagrant fabrication. Come on, let's leave this loser to his phony science fiction. But the other frogs remained, including Fliz, the froggy vixen. And she said, Fergus, those are pretty wild and radical maybes. In fact, you're pretty rad yourself. Let's make some tadpole babies. Next second, they were snogging in a full-on frog French kiss. While Franklin, on the sidelines, whined, "Oh, sick, dude, that's my sis." And then, disengaging, Fliz invited Ferg over for lunch. And Frank agreed. For frog's sakes, find him something else to munch. So away they went. And well, let's not get into nitty-gritties. But as they hopped away, the others sang this little ditty. Hooray for faithful Fergus Frog, the frog who used his brain to save his frenemy from soggy death, sucked down the drain, and also found a way to land the female he'd been ogling, with whom he's off to fool around and father flocks of froglings. Thank you.